So today, we're going to tear into a forensic analysis that pulls back the curtain on a massive crisis, something happening right at the heart of global commerce. We're going to break down how a series of systemic frauds have not only cost billions, but have also exposed a huge vulnerability in the way our entire world of trade actually works.
All right, just take a second and look at this number. That's $10,856,000,000. And I want to be crystal clear here. This isn't some back-of-the-napkin estimate. No, this is the actual verified loss from just 12 major fraud cases. The number is just staggering, and it puts the insane scale of a problem that most people never talk about right in our faces.
But this number, it's way more than just a big, scary statistic. You have to think of it like a symptom, like a fever. It's signaling a much, much deeper structural failure inside the entire global trade system. So, how are we going to unpack all of this? Simple. Here's our roadmap. We're going to start with that $10 billion red flag, then we'll get into the illusion of control, dissect how these scams really work, trace the devastating domino effect they cause, and finally, we'll lay out what a real defense looks like. Okay, first up, that $10 billion red flag. This is where we really start to grasp the sheer scale of what we're dealing with. So check this out. Here's the threat map. The first thing that just pops right off the page are the hotspots. Singapore, the UK, Switzerland. These are the nerve centers of global trade. And as you dig into the data, a really clear pattern starts to emerge. The main targets? Oil and metals. And the victims? Well, in more than half of all cases, it's the international banks getting hit. Which leads us to the obvious question, right? How on earth is it possible that these systems, which are supposed to be so secure with all these layers of control, could just fail so spectacularly? And you know what's wild? The answer is it's right here. This warning system shows us the root causes, and they're genuinely chilling. Just look at this. 75% of these attacks are based on forged documents, and an incredible 67%, two-thirds, involve deals where nobody bothered to physically check if the goods even existed. This quote from the analysis just absolutely nails it. Paper-based due diligence is no longer a defense mechanism. It is an active liability. Let me say that again. What it means is trusting the old paper-based ways doesn't just fail to protect you anymore. It's like you're leaving the front door wide open and inviting disaster right in. In this slide, wow, it just perfectly illustrates the clash between theory and the harsh reality. On one hand, you have the old school thinking, which just assumes that key documents, like a bill of lading, are reliable. But then reality comes crashing in, telling us that in 3 out of 4 cases, those papers are perfect forgeries. The entire security system is basically a house of cards. All right, so we get why the defenses are failing. For this next part, let's get into the how. How are these sophisticated attacks actually pulled off? We're going inside the anatomy of the scam. And you really need to look closely at this, because it shows this isn't just some simple trick. We're talking about a fully orchestrated operation. Scammers are using a whole toolkit. You've got the document forgery, of course, that's the main weapon, but they're also using bribery, hiding money through shell companies, and using something called circular trading to create this illusion that everything is legitimate. Each layer is designed to beat a different type of control. To really see how this works, let's walk through a real-world case that honestly sounds like it's straight out of a movie script, the paper trap. So imagine this. Someone promises to sell $590 million worth of high-purity nickel. And the paperwork? Oh, it was a masterpiece. Contracts, warehouse receipts, inspection certificates, every single document looked absolutely perfect. It was a work of art, really, designed to make everyone feel safe and secure. But here's the punchline. The reality? It was a complete and total sham. Those shipping containers weren't full of valuable nickel. They were filled with worthless rocks and rubble. The paperwork was pristine, but the goods were a lie. And this right here? This is where a financial hit turns into a full-on existential crisis. In this section, the domino effect, we see how these scams don't just drain a bank account, they completely destroy companies from the inside out. So the first domino to fall is operational ruin. For the companies that get hit, we're talking about an immediate collapse. Operations grind to a halt, there are mass layoffs, desperate restructuring, just to stay alive. The cases of Zenrock and Noble Group are just brutal examples of this. Then the second domino falls, and maybe it's the fastest one of all, the loss of market confidence. The second the fraud gets out, it's like a switch flips. Credit lines just disappear. Liquidity dries up. The company is totally isolated overnight. It's almost always a fatal blow. And then there's the final domino, the one that really reminds you of the human cost, criminal liability. This isn't just about spreadsheets anymore. We are talking about real executives, real founders facing prison sentences of over 17 years and fines in the millions. The risk isn't just financial anymore, it's deeply personal.
So I know, we've painted a pretty bleak picture so far. But the good news is, this analysis doesn't just stop at diagnosing the problem. It also gives us a really clear roadmap for building a real defense. So let's get to our final section, a new mandate for defense.
The proposal is a 3-layered defense. First up, for investment committees. You have to mandate independent physical verification of the assets. It's not optional. The new rule is simple. If you can't see it and touch it, it doesn't exist. Period. Second, for the risk committees, you have to implement strict limits on how much you can be exposed to any single counterparty. That's how you contain the damage when things go wrong. And third, for the compliance and legal teams, apply what's called an extended Know Your Customer process. That means you don't just investigate your client, you investigate their entire network.
And that leaves us with this one huge, thought-provoking question to end on. If paper documents, the bedrock of trust and commerce for literally centuries, have now become an active liability, a vulnerability, what other fundamental pillar of global commerce, something we all take for granted today, is going to be the next to fall?